Hello YouTube, welcome to my channel, and today I'm going to review Gardens of the Moon. It is the first book of Malazan, Book of the Fallen, and it took me 7 weeks to read it. I took my time, read it slowly, and I'm going to review it and tell you what I think. I previously made a video, or a couple of videos, on this series, and I just fell in love with it instantly, and today we're also going to find out if that held up and what I think about it. And what do I actually think about the whole package of this book? And am I going to continue reading the series? So stick around and we'll see. I'm just going to give it to you straightforward as a summary before I continue. I totally adore this book. I loved it, all of it. Sure, there are some nitpicks that I have here and there, but all in all, it's an experience like none other that I've had, and it is thus far my favorite book that I've ever read in my entire life. Period. Let's see if any of the other books live up to that expectation in the series, but this was just perfectly written for someone like me. So I don't even know what to say. If you want to know more about that, you can check out my older videos. I'm going to try to keep this review spoiler free. So we're going to be spoiler free. What do I say? Let's start by saying who this is for, and then I might say who it is not for, and then I'll just have a little rant summary like why you should read this, why it's good, what I liked about it, without trying to spoil it. So who is this for? This is for someone who really enjoys typical high fantasy, like super high fantasy, swords and dragons and different races and just epic stuff. But what I love about it, and it was so unexpected for me, is it's not traditional fantasy with like elves and dwarves. It has its own races, and you really need to be open to that. If you want an old school rehash of old like fantasy races, it's the same thing all over again, you're not going to find it here. This is a new kind of fantasy that you have to be open for. It's like entering a totally new world, but it's still familiar. There are still beats and patterns, and it's still fantasy. It feels like a real legit fantasy, but it just hasn't been written in this way before. And the races just make sense for me. They're pretty cool, and it's really freaking cool. And every scene you read in this book is so good and so cool that there's an overarching story, of course, because it's a book. It has a story, and it weaves all these things together in such a beautiful way. But it's at the same time, it's like reading 10 different books, but they're all weaved into the same book at the same time. And that is just so unique, but it also takes a certain kind of reader and a certain kind of mind to appreciate that. So very high fantasy, a lot of different kinds of characters, and some of them you might not like. I think I liked all the characters in this book, but some of them I initially really disliked, like heavily, especially when you've read a section in the book and then you're taken away from all of those characters. That entire cast just disappears, and you just transport it to a new place with a character that you're like, who the hell is this? Like, this is like a terrible NPC that I never want to talk to, and then you grow to like that character. So, yeah, spoiler. This is not a spoiler, but for those of you who read the book, it involves a dream. I can put it like that. But I actually grew to like even those characters. And just how everything is put together is so wonderful and so beautiful. And I don't even know what to say more than that. There are also a lot of hints of stuff that you can find out, some mysteries, a lot of unanswered questions in this book, but also a lot of things that are resolved. If you're not okay with that, if you feel anxious and stressed, instead of feeling curious and motivated when there are mysteries, maybe you shouldn't read this book. Because in my case, I just feel curious, stimulated, and motivated, and it just makes the world feel alive for me, and it's intellectually stimulating. I've seen a review where an individual said that people who read Malazan seem to think that they're smarter than others, and I heavily but respectfully disagree with that. I think it's more about you enjoy Malazan if you like to be stimulated. It's just more stimulation. It's more, oh, it's like a little puzzle, like a little game, but it's fun and it's interesting and you see patterns and you're not introduced to a character and they just drown you with their emotions and memories and backstory. You're exposed to people through events, just like in real life. Yeah, like you meet someone, you get to know some stuff about them, but not everything, and that just makes sense to me. And then we get to another part, and it's the characterization. I have heard that people have had like reservations about the characterization in this book, and that's one of the main things that kept me away from it. But what I didn't know was that this book has changed my perspective on reading forever. The reason why I'm saying this is that for my entire life, reading books, I felt like books are a specific thing written in a specific way, and I always have to suffer through too many pages and too many words of, how would I put it, self-indulgent and boring, just ponderings and just like, I think I even wrote a note for it. Yeah, self-indulgent and annoying. That's the note I wrote. And the best example of that, this is not a comparison review, but the best example of that is Name of the Wind and that Kingkiller Chronicles series. The first book is actually pretty good, but all in all, the series is actually terrible. Because the bang for buck you get for that entire series this far, those 2 books that came out this far, and forget about all the extra filler books, that I'm not even going to mention them. If it was a Malazan, it would have been 30 pages or something. 30 to 100 pages. Seriously. Like all those events in that fucking series. It took you so much time and energy. In Malazan, there'll be a couple of pages. Okay, maybe 150 pages at a maximum. But it's still like a small part of this book. What I'm trying to say is characterization, how the story moves forward. If you're a person who wants things to be very slow and drawn out, and you read a book and you're like, what happened? Please don't read this. Please read Name of the Wind or some other fantasy that's like emotional and a character that's annoyingly self-indulgent and annoying ad nausea. And you'll feel like this is what it's meant to be. Like reading books is like this. You're a reader? Okay, you have to tolerate this. Lo and behold, I was not expecting to read this, and this book changed. I am so happy about this, and this comes from the heart. This book has changed how I view books, because I always felt like I am not a reader. I can't read books, because people who read books are not like me. Like I love video games, I like action. You can see that I really mean what I'm talking about. But this book, I'm so grateful for it because it actually taught me that I am a reader. It's just that I need something that's straight to the point and stimulating, and it's no less deep or fun. And this is my critique to all of you people who are fear-mongering and all of you people who I think you have terrible taste. With all due respect, but I think your taste is terrible if you don't like the characterization of Malazan, because my taste is the opposite. And I'm not saying this to diss someone. I'm saying this to diss the fear-mongering and like hate for Malazan and making people feel like this is like an education. You have to like, it's like a burden. No, this is the most fun I have ever had in my entire life with a book. I stopped playing Elden Ring for this because this is so much more fun. Like I really want to hit the point home. I'm so passionate about the series. I've never been it for a book. I didn't even think I was a reader. Like I've read Dune for the Dune books. I've read like between 10 or 20 fantasy books. But I always felt like you have to be a certain kind of person to be a reader. And this, yeah, I think I got my point through. And my point is that the characterization in this is amazing. It's a really good. It's amazing. It's like being in the world and being exposed to different characters. When you meet a person, when you meet a guy, you get you're pals with a guy. You don't get his entire backstory through a fucking monologue with like emotional bullshit, and it's like, am I your therapist? And then you have to listen to all of his bullshit of his entire life, and you don't even fucking care about it. Like, how have you qualified for me even giving a fuck about you? And now you want me to read your entire backstory and feel sorry about you? For me, unpopular opinion, but that's just a sign of how a very toxic thing in modern society, that you want to bond with people through like suffering and complaint. And what the fuck? I want to bond with people through their actions and events and things that happen. And that's how I find out that I like them. And if I like these characters and these people, like in Malazan, then I'll actually give a fuck about their backstory and I'll start getting to know them. That's simple. And this book has done it like no other book, because it has the quick-paced action, like a quick-paced kind of pulpy book, but it also has a depth if you want to find out, if you want to notice the little comments and little things that people say. And right now, I'm wondering so many things about so many characters, not because I need to, but because I took the extra time to notice some details, and I'm like, I like these characters, and I have questions about them. And I might find it out. I might not. Like real people you meet. It makes it feel so alive and so good. So I was going to do like a structured review with who is this for, who is this not for, but I think what I just told you kind of made it clear for you maybe. And I'm just so happy that I found this. This is... Obviously, I'm in love with this series. I was going to start reading like 3 different series. I was trying to pick between them. And I was going to hold off on this because there's so many books. But right now, I don't have anything else in mind. Like, I'm totally okay with dedicating the upcoming year or maybe more than a year to reading these books. And I'm already like 100 pages in Dead House Gates. And even if it's in another continent, it feels like the same book is just continuing, but in the best possible way. One caveat, though, you have to be okay with, like, when a chapter ends or a section of a book ends, you just leave everything that you read. You just start from scratch. And if it's in the same book, I'm guessing it will all converge because it does in this book. But that was a learning curve for me. That was a little bit difficult, so that's a minus. And that made me feel disconnected from the book, and, like, all the hard work that I put into reading, like, the first 160 pages was just swept away, and now we're somewhere else. What the hell happened? Like, why did we lose all those characters? But you don't. So chill. Just be chill. Keep reading, and you will understand things, and it's just so cool. There's so many cool, unexpected twists on things in this. Like, it still feels very fantasy. There are familiar themes, but everything is so new and so amazing. So I love it. What more would be good to know? There is... I would heavily recommend that you actually read a physical book, because there is a glossary at the end and a character index in the beginning of the book. And they are, in my opinion, if you're a diligent reader, you have patience, you want to get the most out of this book, they're actually like an interactive part of the reading for me. Because I, like, when I find a character or someone talks about someone, I do a little mark in the index. And also, the descriptions in the character index, they're very bare bones, the index and the glossary, but it kind of is a genius move. It's not just an index of characters. It's part of a stimulating pattern and part of a stimulating game that is reading these books. It's like a fun game, and I'm not going to say anything more because it's part of the reading experience for me now, and it just clicked with me like that. So you have to be okay with that to get the most, in my opinion, like, thumbing through. Because if you only listen to the audiobook, which in my opinion is terrible, but I got through it because I wanted to listen also while I was reading. After I read a section, I'd listen to it. If you only listen to the audiobook and you think this book is terrible, I don't blame you. And if you read it on an ebook, that's better than only audiobook, but it's still going to be hard to go back and forth. So heavily recommend this format. What more comments would I have? I have some nitpicks, but they're very specific and story specific, so I'm going to save them for a spoiler talk later. I'm going to do videos like that if I have the time and energy. Let's see. Anything more? Gardens of the Moon. There are so many cool moments. Okay? There's this noble knight, young guy who wants to be a soldier kind of character. There is this older soldier that is just jaded and tired of everything and doesn't want to have friendships or relationships. There's this innocent thief that falls in love with girls. There's these friends at a bar that hang out at a bar. You're like, what the hell? How is this pertaining to the story? There are these powerful mages in different factions that all have different personalities, and assassins guilds, rogue mages, and there are also an old race of pitch black skinned kind of elves with white hair, and they're really freaking cool. And yeah, and they live on a floating city. It's like a floating continent kind of city thing. It's just so cool, and so many more things that I'm not going to tell you more because it's part of the experience. A lot of POVs, and yeah, I can't give this higher praise. And so this was a very unprepared review. Maybe not the best review of this book, but I wanted to give you a review and an update of my reading and just let you all know as well that I am definitely going to continue reading. A lot of people say this is not even the best book in the series. They usually rank it lower, and I don't know if I will, because this was so friggin' good that this made me think that, I didn't think I was a reader, and now I am a reader. What higher praise can you give a book? The way it's written, the way the characterization is written, the way the story is written. It feels like, finding a home in the reading department, and I'm 35, and I'm just so glad that I found this. This is not just something I read, oh, it's a good book, it's a 10 out of 10. This has fundamentally changed how I view reading and books. And yeah, I am so grateful. I'm at a loss of words, and also a lot of disappointment and frustration at people that bash this series. Not because you can't have your own opinion, but because I shouldn't have listened to them. It's just, yeah. I'm just going to stop there and be grateful and keep reading Dead House Gates and mind my own business. Until next time. So thanks for your time, and stay tuned.